Hello! Today we're going to be making steak and pasta. Making the pasta dough. In your flour, you're going to want to make a well. Crack the eggs into the well. You can add them already scrambled, but we're going to scramble them right here with a fork. Slowly incorporate the flour into the eggs. Soon you'll see it takes on the consistency of wet sand. Using your hands, start to knead the dough until it becomes one singular piece. It's going to take about 10 to 15 minutes of kneading to develop gluten. As you see here, there's a little bounce back in the dough. You're going to want to keep kneading until it's much more malleable like this. Once there, roll it up into a ball, put it back into the bowl, and cover with a damp paper cloth or towel, and let it rest for an hour. After the hour, it's going to be much more malleable, as seen here. And there should be a bit of bounce back. So set aside until you're ready to roll it into the pasta. Now for the steaks. Very simple here. I have 2 sirloin steaks that I got from my local grocery store. Simply place them on a plate with some papered towels and pat them dry. After that, I season them with salt generously on both sides. Now, onto the vegetables. Here I'm just slicing up some white button mushrooms. You can use baby portabellas as well if you want. Either mushroom will work just fine. We're going to want to use about 1 box of mushrooms, so roughly around 10 to 15 mushrooms, and set those aside in a bowl. Now this might look like a shallot, but it's actually a red onion. Those are the inner layers of the red onion, and we're going to want to chop those nice and small. After you're done chopping the inner layers, we're going to be using the outer layers. For these, we're just going to do simple strips. Just like this. Once you're done cutting those, set aside for later use. And now, making the pasta. So now we have our dough been rested. We're going to cut that into smaller, more manageable pieces, roughly about a quarter. It's going to make it easier to work with. We have our pasta roller here and we're starting at 0. We're just trying to flatten it out a bit. As you see, I folded the pasta onto itself. I'm trying to make a rectangle here to make it easier to feed through the machine. Fold it again if you feel like it's not squared up enough. This is going to give us better looking pasta. Once we have our nice rectangle, we can keep going up the steps of the pasta machine. As you see, the sheet's going to come out nice and rectangular. Remember to keep your workplace nice and floured, as well as your pasta machine, to prevent any sticking. Continue to progressively make the pasta thinner and thinner by going up the levels. As you see here, I'm adding more flour. Flour is important for multiple reasons. If the pasta wasn't floured, as you see here when it's being rolled down and folded onto itself, it would start to stick, making it much harder to work with. Another reason why you want to work with smaller manageable pieces is because if you use a larger amount of dough, you're going to be dealing with a really long sheet of pasta. Once we've gotten it to our desired thickness, I ended up at around a 7, I'm cutting it into sheets, taking off the ends to square it off. Cut the sheets into your desired pasta length. Now fold the sheet onto itself and slice. And make sure to unfold all the pieces of pasta. Now you see how the sides aren't perfectly clean. You could take those off if you were focusing on presentation, but here I'm just cooking for home. You can use all the pasta scraps and roll them up and turn them into a new sheet. Now here, toss the pasta with some flour to prevent it from sticking to itself, and cover with some saran wrap to prevent it from drying out. Now if you decide that you don't want to make the pasta all in one day, your dough will be good for 2 to 3 days in the refrigerator and up to 3 months in the freezer. Just make sure it's in a proper airtight container. And that's pretty much it. Repeat the process until you have the desired amount of pasta that you want. In my opinion, it's a pretty relaxing process. And now, onto the steaks. Here I'm using an enameled cast iron pan. Bring it up to a high heat, and I added a generous amount of oil. Place your pieces of steak into the pan, facing away from you, to prevent any oil from jumping in your direction. The reason why I added more oil is because I'm going to be using the same pan later on for the onions and mushrooms. It'll take about 2 to 3 minutes on each side, or until they've reached a nice golden color. Then lower the temperature, and we're going to be adding a knob of butter and about 2 minced garlic cloves. I also added some dry thyme. You can use fresh thyme if you have it, and then some freshly cracked pepper. Now, using a spoon, careful not to scratch your pan, baste the steaks with the butter. The steaks will be done once they reach 130 to 135 degrees Fahrenheit or 54 to 57 degrees Celsius for a medium rare. Once there, take them out of the pan and put them on a plate to rest for 5 to 10 minutes before cutting. Now, in that same pan, raise the temperature again. We're going to be adding the sliced onions from earlier. Make sure to keep stirring. Now we're going to add a couple generous splashes of Worcestershire sauce. And continue to stir. Now you're going to want to add half your mushrooms. Keep stirring. The mushrooms may release some liquid. Once that liquid is evaporated, the mushrooms are going to turn a nice golden caramelized color. Once they've gotten to about here, you're pretty much done. Turn off the heat and set aside. And now, to make the pasta dish. At this time, you're going to want to get a pot of water going on the stove to bring it up to a boil. Make sure to generously salt the water. This pasta is going to cook considerably faster than dry pasta, about 2 to 3 minutes, so make sure you keep an eye on it and taste to see if it's al dente. Al dente means when it's slightly undercooked and it's still got a bite to it. We want that because we want to finish cooking the pasta in the pan with the rest of the ingredients. Now if you decided to use dry pasta, just make sure to follow the instructions on the box. And don't forget to salt the pasta water. Make sure you save at least 1 cup of that starchy pasta water. We're going to be using it later. In another pan, with high heat, add a drizzle of olive oil. Here we're going to add the diced onions. You can add a little bit more olive oil to prevent sticking. Make sure to continuously stir to prevent the onions from burning. We're going for a sear here. Once the onions have gotten a little bit of color, we're going to add about 1 to 2 cloves of minced garlic. After the garlic has gotten a little bit of color, we're going to add our washed spinach. Combine the spinach for about a minute. And then add the remainder of your mushrooms. Now combine everything together. I added a knob of butter here. The spinach and mushroom are going to start to release liquids. During this time, I seasoned it with salt, freshly cracked pepper, and some chili flakes. Keep stirring until all that liquid has evaporated. Once it's evaporated, it's time to add the pasta. So now that we added that pasta, using that reserved pasta water from earlier, add a little bit. I added a knob of butter and some more pasta water. That starchy pasta water and the butter are going to emulsify and create a wonderful sauce for the pasta. Keep stirring until the sauce is combined with the pasta and the pasta has finished cooking. And now you're ready for plating. I used 2 generous scoops of pasta here. You can top the pasta with any additional toppings that you'd like grated Parmesan cheese. And then simply place the piece of steak next to the pasta and top it with the onion and mushroom topping that we created earlier. And that's pretty much it, a simple and delicious steak and pasta dish that can easily be made at home. Hope you enjoyed. If you like the content of this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And if there's anything else that you want to see me make, leave it in the comments below. Thank you for watching and happy cooking.